And I want to introduce to you, leave the room to Hans, a very good friend of mine. He's also a BDSM master and a coach and a kink aware. He can present himself and tell you much more about the story that we're gonna tell tonight, this non-monogamy relationship. Thank you, Hans, for coming.
Great. Well, I won't talk too much about me because it's way more interesting, I think, to talk about non-monogamy or polyamory, the two. And I have prepared this PowerPoint that I'd like to share to all of you.
One second, Hans, sorry to say, I forgot something important. I will be in the chat writing the major lines of the conversation in Spanish for the people that don't follow well the English, right? So that's it. Okay.
I wish you well because I have a lot to say. But well, let's see how fast you can write. One of the things I do is presenting TabooTalks. I think it's important to talk about things that are basically sometimes a bit hard to talk about. And today we're going to talk about non-monogamy. Where does your energy go? As said, HansRJWest, I'm a kink-aware coach. I help people in relationships. I help people getting out of the closet if they have other than usual sexualities. I help people introduce those things to their partners. So that's what my job is. You can find me at kinkawarecoach.com in English or Kink in de Relatie in Dutch. The thing is, as you stated, Victor, monogamy is not for everyone. And so maybe polyamory is not for anyone. Bear with me, please, because I will use explicit language. I hope that's not shocking you. And I'm taking a lot of information from several online workshops that taken hours each. So it's really condensed and really combined. I try to cram as much useful info as I can in 30 minutes. I'll be talking about concepts and words. I'll be talking about how-tos. I'll be talking about pitfalls. And then we have, I hope, half an hour of discussion afterwards. In the beginning, it's maybe good to understand that when I came out of the closet as a kink-aware therapist, I had this question, am I crazy or is our culture crazy? And I let the pictures speak for themselves. When we allow the one side and disallow the other side, we have this strange thing about sex and relationships. And I think it's important to just remind that this is our culture that has this problem, basically, in my eyes. In our culture, monogamy is normal and often it's said more natural. And then we start to look at nature, always wondering why we don't look to the lions, but we tend to look at the swans. These are very monogamous, but when we investigate DNA, they're busted. They're not monogamous at all. Okay, so the penguins maybe, and then we investigate the DNA, and what we see is, well, basically, they're so busted as well. That's not monogamous at all. If we do understand that problem, that it's maybe not the birds we should look at, and it gets kind of logic if we look in the evolutionary tree to the gap between birds and humans. And actually, if you look right, the Tyrannosaurus Rex is even closer to us than the swans or the penguins. So if we look at the evolutionary tree, let's have a look at, for instance, bonobos, almost the closest thing to us. and they tend to use sex to regulate social tensions quite well. They also are the only animals that really like to fuck face to face. A problem when you start to question monogamy is where, well, does it end? And a lot of people think, well, if my pastor masturbates while I'm not there, that's where monogamy ends. And others say it's just watching porn, or, well, where does it end? Monogamy seems such a logical thing, but if you look at it, there's quite a lot of differences in how people, live their monogamy. And I always find it interesting with people, am I the owner of my partner's genitals? Is this what monogamy is? You also see that there's a problem with Disney love. You do kind of challenge the romantic Disney love. And I don't think you should throw that away right away. I think it's a safety blanket also. And it's good to remind that you will miss certain things because it keeps you warm when you're alone, this romantic hope. It kills the flames of marital hatred, which, by the way, was a term that somebody, a colleague of mine, started to use in talks, and nobody objected. Everybody recognized marital hatred. And he found it really interesting that our relationships can be sometimes so full of really annoyance and hate, where we do live together as a partner. And well, romantic love gives also comfort and gives this feeling of safety, although it might not quite be correct. So if we leave marital hatred, if we leave romantic Disney love, I often help people remind, please do not forget to mourn that idea. It's a fantasy you had. It was something that kept you warm. It's something that kept you quiet or kept you helped with sad moments. And you will probably miss it if you exchange it for non-monogamy or polyamory. When we talk about love, it could also be interesting, perhaps, to just as a reminder, Steinberg has this triangle, and there's every relationship has its own place, and some are more intimate, some are more passionate, some are more about commitment. Every love relationship has aspects of the three, and it can be that different loves or different relationships can differ in the place they have on the triangle in your life. Also fun is perhaps the 5 languages of love by Chapman, basically telling that we're not all having the same way, the same language of love. And I wouldn't really advise to buy the book. Just remember that there's different ways of love and different languages in love. Some people are more into getting gifts or giving gifts. Others can get quality time, loving words. Sometimes it's doing things together or physical touch that are important to us. And it can really sometimes be that the one partner has a longing for loving words. Me, myself, I'm not so much of a word user in love. And I had partners failing the words, actually. There have, by the way, people have been entering the waiting room. So if somebody would like to admit them, that would be great. The most important word in polyamory, I think, is compersion. And compersion, that's a word that tries to say that you enjoy the joy of your partner, even when it's not that you're the one that's enjoyed by your partner. And that doesn't mean that we're haggling and I give a bit of freedom so I can get a bit of freedom. No, that's something different. And it's not that the voyeuristic fun of seeing my partner fuck somebody else, even though that might be a part of it, but that's not compersion, that's other things. The true joy, the love of and seeing your partner enjoy the joy of others and enjoy others, and that gives you true happiness. I think there's a lot of energy in love. Some people, they live by hate, some people live by fear. I hope I can help people to live by love. And compersion is a form of love in polyamory. When we look to terminology, male or female, that's not so important. When we look at terminology, there's different ways of having relationships. You can have romantic relationships, or you can have sexual relationships. Both are quite okay, of course, and they can be next to each other. And sometimes sex gets a little less in long-term relationships. So there's different aspects in relationship. People can have a primary relationship, which is really important to them, and people can have a secondary relationship, as we call that. So let's try some words. How do we call a relationship which has love and sex, and it's probably the primary relationship, and there's sex with somebody else, but my partner doesn't know. Anybody knows how we call that? Let me tell. It's cheating. That's not polyamory. That's cheating. If we have consent about the fact that we have sex with somebody else, that's what we call swinging. More the sexual part of non-monogamy. There's more sexually flavored non-monogamy. There's also more romantically, sometimes even asexual other lovers that do exist. And that's where we call it polyamory. It's more about the love thing than the sex thing. Sex, of course, can be part of the relationship, does not need to be. If we have a relationship where the primary relationship, then how do we call the other relationship? We're often thinking that's the secondary relationship, but often people find it kind of hard to be the secondary, which sounds a bit hard. So people also call it the non-primary. If we have relationships and it's kind of fluid, it's not clear whether it's a primary or a secondary relationship, it's just not clear, then we kind of call that relationship anarchy against the structured relationship with primary and secondary lovers. And if they're both equal, that's what we call a V relationship. A V with two wings, and the person in the middle is the hinge. If you have a relationship where all three of the partners have a relationship together, we call it a triad. And if you have a relationship where you are the V, you're the hinge in a V relationship with two persons who have a lot of problems together, that's what we call polydrama. So terminology, I hope you might understand that it's important to really, monogamous or non-monogamous, have talks about what actually do we have. Are we having two couples seeing each other every now and then? We call it swapping, more like the swinging kind of thing often. If we have a really stern relationship in all directions, we call it a quad. And if we have two people in a primary relationship with other relationships, both, that's often what open relationships are known as, relatively common. And if we have a person with a relationship with somebody who has a lot of relationships, we call that monopoly. It's a monogamous relationship with somebody who's poly. If we do have a lot of relationships as the person, well, we might call them a slut, and that's actually something to be proud of. We call it in Dutch the geuzennaam, a name that was used to put people down, but then later on it's basically used to be proud of something that other people, well, did tend to put you down with. So, okay. If we're talking about it, so that you just know names when you hear them somewhere. Again, Victor, there are now 3 people who are waiting in the waiting room. I hope somebody will let them in.
I just talked to the manager to let them in.
Okay.
But
cool.
I can do.
And that's while I'm presenting, it's kind of hard. Monopoly has basically 2 reasons, because it's not sad that somebody is only not having any other partner, but loving somebody who is polyamorous. It can be that you're really busy with other projects in your life and that you're almost happy to be just a secondary, so that you don't have all the things that commitment goes with and not all the parts of a relationship. But it can also be that you really have a loving heart that's really monogamous and you fully accept that your partner's love is not monogamous, but is polyamorous. Yeah, it's a thought that love is not necessarily fair, but it doesn't need to be. This fairness, as we often have seen, it should be. So if we're getting real and we look to people who are listening to talks when I do them like this, are basically the question, how do we do this? Or some of you are thinking, how do I get my partner to do this? And both are absolutely valid. I hope there's no thing about that. And I try to, tackle them both. This is a lot of text. Opening up is often a bit rough. And it's great and fulfilling, but if you have a look what you have to do and have to be able, you have to be self-aware, you have to be patient, you have to be able to sit with your own discomfort and the discomfort of your partner. You have able to handle the pain and you have to express your own desires. You have to handle the desires and the pain of your partner. You will be making decisions that are, you're not going to go well. They will cause discomfort and probably are difficult for your partner. And though they will lead to personal growth and relational freedom, it might be hurtful in the beginning. So you have to negotiate boundaries. You have to discuss needs, wants, and nice to haves. You have to know about how to talk about fears and concerns and know the difference between compersion and the nice guy syndrome for either boys or girls, where you just agree to anything and you don't feel like agreeing to something. This is again a thing that I will come back to, how to let the feelings be the feelings they are. There is often in polyamory, there's a NRE discussion, NRE, new relationship energy, because people find it kind of hard that their partner is somehow, infatuated in somebody else. And is it relationship energy? Is it infatuation? I often say if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, most likely it's a duck. I think that infatuation is a little pink mini psychosis where we see things that aren't there, the great qualities of our new partners. And we don't see things that really are there, the bad aspects of those persons. And if your partner is infatuated or into NRE, he or she will probably have a little mini pink psychosis and will do some silly things. Sometimes he will not see you standing there. He will not see what you mean in his or her life. And you may have to remind them. You sometimes have to gently get people down on the ground into reality of your primary relation. You have to talk a lot about things, and as I often say, all of these things are for monogamous relationships as well, but poly is like monogamous relation on steroids. And most important, it's about feelings, and feelings don't change by just thinking. That's we have cognitive behavior therapy, and I'm really liking the idea of thinking good about your feelings, thinking rational about your feelings. But it doesn't need time. Our emotional brain needs rehearsal, and rehearsal takes time. So that's where you're often a bit coaching, and you help people to do the things, not just think the things, but do the things that makes changes. So if you go into non-monogamy, you have to have a warm welcome to the uneasy feelings. Of course, me being a coach, therapist, and helping people with problems, I see a lot of the uneasy feelings, but you have to mentally prepare yourself that you embrace those feelings. There will be guilt, there will be despair, there can be moments of panic, revenge, jealousy, infatuation. It can all be there as a possibility in the love life you have of polyamory. And it's important to just expect those. And if you expect them, it's not so bad if it happens. If you don't, it feels like really, I shouldn't feel this. And that's kind of the wrong thing. As I often say, people often tell other people with difficult feelings, you should not think of this. And I would only try to ask you maybe 15 seconds to not think of a white bear. Really try to not think of a white bear for 15 seconds. Only 5 minutes of not thinking of. 5 seconds, sorry. Anybody? We cannot not think of things. And if we cannot think of a really unimportant white bear, it's really very unlikely that we cannot think of things that are important to us. And if monos say, well, you just shouldn't think of this, you just shouldn't want these strange relationships. Okay, people can choose for themselves. But I often ask them, well, just not think of a white bear for 30 seconds. There's a lot of energy in love and in relationships when we try to pull a beach ball underwater. If we suppress our feelings or we suppress our partner's feelings, that costs energy. Of course, processing emotions also costs energy, but it gives energy back as the ball comes above water. I often have this wisdom tile where I say, people try to do, are you trying to do something about your emotions, or are you trying to do something with your emotions? And I hope it will be the latter. Often people are, and the red letter shouldn't have been there yet, but anyway, often people try to prevent pain. And if you not just try to prevent pain, but you accept that you probably, because all patients basically are painful every now and then. Then you go into what do we need as partners to get out of the pain. When I have hurt you, how can I give you love and care? How can you see that I love you? How can I regroup with you? Or how can we regroup as a couple or a triad or a quad? How can we realign where we want to go to? And also, how can we have good, clean fun with without all the difficulties, but also the fun together? It's really important that it's in our lives, I think. And there are sometimes real triggers in polyamory. And remember, then you're the trigger, not the cause of the problems, but it can be like trauma triggers. It can be that people are having unhealed attachment wounds or abandonment problems. It can also be that they're culturally instilled allergies, so to say. People even talk about micro cheating lately, and that's when you just look in your agenda, well, that's already cheating. So sometimes people are really exaggerated. But it's important to understand, and that's where the polyvagal theory comes from, that our deep brain, our brainstem, sometimes reacts just as a crocodile would. And these are feelings of frenzy, fight, fright, freeze, feign death even. And it colors our minds, it colors our ideas about what's happening in the situation. So if somebody looks, smells, sounds exactly like maybe a father that cheated or a mother that cheated or an ex-partner that cheated, I can have chosen rationally for polyamory, but it triggers me, and I could get into the trigger and get into the polyvagal reactions and feel like, oh, this is terrible that it happens. The emptiness of when your partner is on a date, it may just feel like some absent parental figure or absent father or absent mother, and it can be hard, and I can have the same fright or the same angriness or the same I should smile frankly and endure it as people have had in their childhood maybe. So it's good to dig deeper sometimes together with your partner. What actually happens, and you might be the trigger, not the cause. The cause may be years back. Doubt is a feeling, it's a part of living, but it's certainly a feeling of poly too. And that can be either about quantity of your partners, the sheer amount of your partners can be a problem. Sometimes you see men and women both choosing to do a polyamorous relationship, and then it's apparently for men harder to get females to love them than for the females who find men. So it can be the quantity that sometimes gives doubt and gives difficult feelings, or it can also be the quality. You may start out as, oh, well, it's just light fun and it's not so important. And then the relation grows. And then suddenly there's this moment where you think, Christ, what do I really mean to my partner? Especially if these butterflies of the mini psychosis hit your partner. And it's a really thing that you might feel jealous. And that is a stigma in some swinger or poly communities. You shouldn't feel, but we talked about that. If you're jealous, have a look at why you're jealous. Have a look, is it out of fear of loss? And what am I actually losing? And it could be it's a fear about insecurity, about myself, or about uncertainty, about relationship. Because I always like to have this I, you, and our relationship triangle where I have a look what we do together. And it could be also a reaction to intuition, to mystery, if your partner doesn't say anything, or it could be a response to real imbalance. It's not all roses. So sometimes relationships do get out of balance because of polyamory, just as relationships go out of balance in monogamous relationships. It's good, again, to think about your expectations, and it's good to remind yourselves day in, day out, non-monogamy, monogamy, it's done together. So talk about your fears, talk about your insecurities and uncertainties, talk about the misery you feel, or talk about the real imbalance you tend to see, rightly so or not. And it is sometimes quite tempting to create two stories, especially in a V relationship, to create two stories next to each other. And if you're in a V mono relationship, a V non-mono relationship, it's up to you as the hinge to respect both wings and to also get them to respect each other and to clarify the things that are happening. You're not the only one who has the responsibility as the hinge in the V, but you are the translator of maybe different love languages. Now, if we get to how do I get my partner to start up, then beginners' problems are often forgotten, and it is a big sexual no-no. You really like to fuck somebody with a condom, but it would be better without. And we should, well, perhaps have talked about it. And often people just are silent about their safer sex practices. And I think it's not good to respect this information. I think that there is no 100% safe sex, so I'm never talk about safe sex, but there are safer sex practices, and you make choices. And you could say, well, we take risks, or you can even use PrEP, for instance, to not be confronted with those problems. But it could be that basically, yeah, well, at least you talk about it. If we're trying to get our partner to do things, okay, there is one absolute worst way of trying to convey polyamory to your partner. Anybody, any idea of the absolute worst way of trying to convey polyamory? Let me spill it for you. You waited too damn long, you have been thinking of others, and you can't trust yourself anymore. So you started cheating. And then you have to, if that comes out, you have to rebuild the trust bases in your relationship. And that costs a lot of time. And it will probably not be with the ones you cheated with that you can open your relationship up, even if you imagine it will. I often found that a really painful and long period of mourning and yeah, for all three partners. And it's good to remember, let's maybe not cheat. Let's try to do this ethically and with open visor. As in an open relationship, it can sometimes happen that as a metamour, so the one who is also in love with the hinge person, and that's my other partner of my partner. As a metamour, you can see problems in the other relationship. And that's often a harsh period. That's often difficulty. You will be most likely seen as somebody trying to snatch away the partner. If you help people, the only thing you can do is how can I support you to handle your shits with your other partner? Unless we're in a triad, your problems are your problems. Don't try to carry the whole load and leave somebody. Then that's sometimes hard. If you see your partner having troubles in that other relationship. With people, I always try to help them think of their recovery skill sets, because expectations, you will fuck up somewhere. You will hurt your partner. You will make mistakes. And then it's good to know and to think of the recovery skill set which has breaks. Do you have safe words? Do you have a moment where you can say, we stop this now, or we don't continue now, and we have a talk first? We have to be able to regroup. We have to, how do you pull together again? Where did you come from, and where do you want to go? Sometimes it's just about de-stressing. It's about being able to vent and breathe, to ventilate and to express. Sometimes you have to just support the other ones, or support your metamour, support the lover of your lover. And it tends sometimes to tangle, and we have to, and we then want to have, if we're in this fighting frenzy, we want to have everything clear and told, and everything should be said. Sometimes you also have to untangle and forgive, and try to be curious and learn lessons. It's basically the basis of universe is time and energy, and that's what a life is: limited time and limited energy. Although some people like to talk about unlimited energy, well, especially if you're older, you start to notice that there's limits in energy. And you can't kill time, and you can't create time. You can only spend it on something or someone. And I hope this talk helps you to spend it wisely, because you can spend your energy in okay, I'll wait for my partner. I'll wait for my partner. Or we'll try to have these questions that often people start with, how can we prevent pain? And often that doesn't work too well. What are the rules and regulations so that you will be kept in check? That often doesn't really help somebody to trust the partner. If we can go to how can we strengthen each other so that we can pain bear together, and yeah, monogamy is hurtful sometimes. Polyamory will be too. How can we help each other to carry this? And for instance, a veto sounds nice. So no, if you don't agree, I will just let this partner go. Yeah, that sounds great until the moment where you have to say, hey, this partner that you by now really love, or there is this relationship has been created, and now you got to get out of it because it makes me uneasy. That's not easy to say, and not easy to hear, and hardly fair towards the other partner. So vetoes, they sound nice, but I wouldn't put my hopes too high on them. Polysaturation is a word that might be of interest. As I often say, love is endless, but your agenda is not. Especially about this time and energy thing. Maybe you think a bit about quantity versus quality versus quantity. Polysaturation is when the amount of partner is so high that either the quality of the context or the frequency of the context start to suffer. So polysaturation is often spreading yourself a bit thin, and your love may be endless, but your time is not. So as I often say, Google Calendar comes to the rescue. Do plan together, do open Google again, calendars together, so that you know who is where, what is the possibilities, when are the kids where, and when is the partner ill, or that's all. It's with two persons, it's sometimes not easy to combine. Well, with 3 or 4, it's even worse. So if you look at monogamy, it sounds really harsh if I told it. And now why would you? And I would like help to remember all these reasons are reasons why non-monogamy is great, because it's really great. It's great that you have this rich life with possibilities that other people don't dare to take. And it's good to think about what your life could look like if you gave yourself room, if you wanted to. And the basic thing is, of course, it's about quality of life for all partners. And if you think about how you want to be seen by your partners, that can really help. C'est la ton qui fait la musique. Do you want to be holding back, or do you want to encourage and cheer your partner's love life? I hope I've given some insights. If you want to reach out to me for private questions, that's of course my email address. And I will now stop sharing to have a little bit of discussion together, as far as I'm concerned, or questions from people.
Thank you very much, Hans. I apologize for the translation in Spanish. Something happened in between.
Okay.
I couldn't type. And also as well was very difficult.
Yeah, I told you already. I mean, I tried to cram a lot of information for you all, so I'm sorry to make it hard for you.
But thank you very much. It's really a lot of information. It's like, okay, it's processing.